A E I O U A E I O U. Mm-hmm. So what's the camera view like? I know that done. I know it's good, but what's what is welcome, welcome to another edition of SOBS, Situational On Air Online Bible Study with Brother KP. It is time to take the shackles off your mind and see what the Lord has in store for you. Welcome again to another edition of SOBS. So we are here every Sunday from 5 to 6 p.m. SOBS is our organic but yet pragmatic view of the Bible and its application to your way of life today. Again, we are live in the studios of Vibes Reggae Arena. You can reach us here every Sunday from 5 to 6 on my Facebook page, SOBS Sobs, also at vibesreggaearena.com. You can also catch us on the Caribbean Rhythm Radio Network, that's crrradio.com. You can also give us a call and share a thought at 407 917 6373. That call in number is 407 917 6373. We can also reach us via text at 407 535 1808. And we invite you to come SOBS with us. Share a thought on my Facebook page. I'd be happy to hear from you and maybe respond to a question or two. But again, we just thank you for taking the time out of your Sunday to tune in to our radio show, SOBS Situational On Air Bible Study. It is a privilege to share with you the gospel. We believe the Bible, the Bible, is the solution source for every situation or circumstance that plagues us today. Jesus is already delivered, and it is my prayer that you will benefit from the word as I have. God bless you. Today is a wonderful day to hear what the Lord has to say concerning your situation. Let's get right into it. I'm here with the affable Donald Wilcox. He's the producer of the show, and we're excited to be working together to bring a program for the benefit of the listener. If you saw the Facebook page today, the title for today's edition is, Do Demons Have You Down? Are habits, circumstances, issues surrounding you that you are having difficulty breaking free from? Well, take them to the feet of Jesus. And today, I want to spend a little time and expound on a man who was in a critical situation. In Luke chapter 8, verse 27, as he takes his issues to the feet of Jesus. We've talked for the last few months, time and again, about the necessity to do things a little different, to change, modify our behavior so that we can be all that God would have us to be. We are living in a time where trouble surrounds us, where life is hard, and the devil seems to be interested in capitalizing on the difficulties of life. But I want to provide a ray of hope to someone and help you to realize that no one is beyond hope. Nothing is impossible to God. Nothing is impossible with God. And Jesus, the Christ, has stripped back. He's torn down the boundaries that we have placed on our humanity issues. There are no boundaries anymore. And I believe that when we bring our issues to the feet of Jesus, He'll change your situation. He'll move on your behalf and create in you something that no one can take away. Let's take a look at this story in the book of Luke, chapter 8. It talks about a man who is possessed by demons. And I'll start reading from verse 27. And it reads, "When Jesus stepped ashore, he was met by a demon-possessed man from the town. For a long time, this man had not worn clothes or lived in a house, but had lived in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell at his feet, shouting at the top of his voice, 'What do you want with me, Jesus, the Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me.' For Jesus had commanded the impure spirit to come out of the man. Many times before it had seized him, and though he was chained hand and foot and kept under guard, he had broken his chains and had been driven by the demon into solitary places. Jesus asked him, 'What is your name?' 'Legion,' he replied, because many demons had gone into him. And they begged Jesus repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. A large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside. The demons begged Jesus to let them go into the pigs, and he gave them permission. When the demons came out of the man, they went into the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. When those tending the pigs saw what had happened, they ran off and reported this in the town and the countryside. And the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone out, sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man had been cured. Then all the people of the region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were overcome with fear. So he got into the boat and left. What a story this represents for many of us who are struggling with life issues. This particular story can be a little difficult to teach sometimes because we don't experience, right, demons as they are described in the Bible. However, I want you to understand that all the demons that Jesus confronts have three things in common. One, they cause self-destructive behavior to the one who's entrapped. Two, the victim feels trapped in that condition. We feel like we can't get out, that there's nothing we can do on our own to alleviate our situation. And thirdly, they separate us from a normal type of life, from a normal living cycle, and from our families. Take a moment and think about that. Does that sound familiar? Do you know someone who suffers from mental illness, from crack addiction, from alcoholism, from sexual impurities or immoralities? Is this word speaking to you as you struggle to break free from a self-destructive lifestyle, from a behavior that's causing you to repeatedly look in the mirror and understand who you really are? A sense of entrapment or feeling trapped in your condition can be prevalent if that's you in that situation. I think that when we define demons as those forces which have captured us and prevented us from becoming what God intends us to be, we are in effect surrounded by, and you can take a step further and say possessed by spirits or demons, the type that Christ has already encountered. I mean, think about it. Our demons can be of many varieties. Mental illness, I mentioned a few earlier: alcoholism, schizophrenia, paranoia, different types of addictions and obsessions, destructive habits, and the list continues. But note the similarities between this demon-possessed man and the demons that possess us. This man was totally cut off from family and society. He didn't live like regular people lived, but he lived in what the Bible refers to as tombs, which was probably caves that were used as a burying place, somewhere where you would bury someone. And he was driven by these demons into these wild areas, these solitary places. In other words, he was already in a living death, separated from normal people and normal living. And it brings to mind a conversation I had recently with a fellow colleague, as we were talking about some of the things that we see on the street. When I left Tennessee, I came back to Orlando, and it's my first time coming living in Orlando since I left some 30 years ago. And I was amazed at how much Orlando has changed. Orlando is now a big city. And along with being a big city, it seems to have all of the big city problems. And one of those issues is the number of people that are walking the street, sitting on park benches, living in cardboard boxes. And what caught my attention as I was driving just a few days ago is the not just the number of people that were living this way, but I noticed that they were talking to themselves and making gestures, wild gestures at the air, and just a lot of odd type of behavior. And it struck me that maybe there's something going on inside of their spirits, inside of their bodies, inside of their minds, that's causing this type of behavior. And so this behavior seemed to be, and still seems to be, so prevalent that it warrants a discussion. And so here we see a man who is living with demons. And he's not only living with demons, the demons are hurting him. When you look at Mark's version of this story, Mark tells us that this guy was bruising himself with stones, and that he could not be restrained, even with the chain. So imagine that the activity, the mental illness that he is under is so prevalent within him that even being chained, even having fetters around his feet and kept under guard, they couldn't hold him. But fourthly, and I think which is probably the most depressing part, was that he was so totally depressed that he couldn't recognize what was happening around him, but the demons could. Look at what the demons call Jesus. This man who could not free himself had demons who knew who the solution was. The demons recognized Jesus as the Son of the Most High God. And so this story, as well as other demon healing stories in the gospel, is that Christ has the power of God to cast out demons. Christ has the power as the living God to subdue demonic activity. And what that means to you, listener, is that Christ is able to deliver you from any negative behavior, any terrible situation, whether it's with your relationship, whether it's with substance abuse, whatever it is, Christ has demonstrated that he has the power to deliver. He is the source of the solution. I think the good news about this story is this is the only time in Jesus' ministry, in his healing ministry, that he does this type of miracle in Gentile territory. This man's proclaiming his healing throughout the city is really an example, a foretaste of what's going to happen as Christ opens up this ministry, his ministry, to the world. Jesus did most of his ministry within a 7 to 10 square mile area, mostly in towns that were already Jewish subscribers. But he takes the time. Watch this, listener. He takes the time, goes out of his way to go and find this man who was crying out. His soul was crying out for help. Jesus could hear, could feel his anguish, and he takes the time to address this man's issue. One of the things I want to bring out as a key point here is when you look at the power of Christ to overcome negative behavior and demonic issues, even the world has grasped some of what Christ is able to do. Look at what the AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, who has a 12-step program to healing, look at the 3 steps that they begin their programs with. First, they tell you that you have to admit that you were powerless over your addiction and that your lives had began to become unmanageable. Secondly, they ask you to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore you back to sanity. And thirdly, they ask you to make a decision to turn your will and your lives over to the care of God as you understand him. And I believe what God is saying to someone today who's listening, even though you might look fine on the outside, God knows what's going on with you on the inside. He wants you to be the very best that you can be. And he's asking us to come to the feet of Jesus and submit your issue to him. You know, if we could fix our problems on our own, then why bother? If we could get rich, for example, on our own, we wouldn't need the systems that are in place today. But sadly, when you look at the condition of humanity, there is a dire need for an understanding to a better path. And I submit to you that when we place our issues at the feet of Jesus, there's an opportunity for your path, your direction to change, to be altered, so that you can be all that Christ would have you to be. As we lean into our first break, think about what we've talked about today. Sitting at the feet of Jesus. We'll be back in just a few minutes with SOBS, Situational On Air Online Bible Study with Brother KP.
Richard Stevens, and right now I'd like to invite you to join me on the Victory Casino Cruise Line. Yes, for the second annual Mother's Day Caribbean style dinner dance cruise. Yes, taking place on the 11th of May. Mothers, remember now, we're gonna treat you like the queen you are. Mothers are our queen. So mama, you deserve a pot of gold. You're the driving force in my life. See you there. Mwah!
Good evening. This is Donna Pilson out of Panama City, Florida, with your Just Breathe segment on Sobs by Brother KP. You know, sometimes as we go through this life and experience various trials, it can get us down and make us feel overwhelmed and sometimes leave us wondering how we're going to make it. We can feel like adversities and attacks are coming from all directions, kind of like we're surrounded by situations and circumstances that are always on the attack. Well, tonight I'd like to encourage you to not give up or give in to those feelings, because it's in those times that we have to remember that God is still right there with us. I'm reminded of 2 Kings chapter 6, when Israel and Syria were at war, and the king of Aram sent an army to Dothan to kill the prophet Elijah, because Elijah was just messing up every plan the king had made to advance against Israel. And in the morning, when Elijah's servant went out, he saw that their camp was surrounded by this enemy army, and he was afraid. But Elijah came out and told him to fear not, and he prayed that God would open up his eyes. And when he did, the servant saw the heavenly army surrounding their enemy, standing ready to protect their camp from anything that would come against them. And that's the same today. God's army is already in place, surrounding us, there to provide God's protection, not to prevent our trials, because the Bible in James 1 tells us that we will have trials and tribulations, but we can count it all joy, because we know that if we stay under the shadow of the Almighty, those trials and tribulations won't destroy us. And not only does God surround us with his protection, but also with his love. Psalms 32:10 says that many sorrows come to the wicked, but the unfailing love surrounds those who trust the Lord, so we can rejoice in the Lord and be glad. So my prayer for you today is that when you're going through and you're feeling overwhelmed, attacked, discouraged, or whatever it may be, that God will open up your spiritual eyes that you may see and remember that his love and protection is there, surrounding us, to give you the strength and the hope to go through whatever may come your way. Thank you. This has been Donna Pilson with Just Breathe on Sobs by Brother KP.
Yes, don't miss reggae superstar Richard Stevens with musical fusion band DJ Tobago, DJ Boom with Winter Danger. All sponsored in part by the Caribbean Rhythms Radio Network, Spice of Life, and South Florida Trelawney Reunion Foundation. For more information, log on to crrnetwork.com. That's crrnetwork.com. Yeah, man.
To another edition of Sobs, Situational On-Air Online Bible Study. This is Brother KP breaking down our subject today, sitting at the feet of Jesus. We are looking at Luke chapter 8, verse 27. My producer is here winding things up for me as well. What's on your mind, Don?
Oh, everything's all right, Brother KP. Just checking out the lesson and you're giving out to everybody. Once again, we welcome you here. We welcome you, Brother KP, and everyone else out there to Vibes Reggae Arena at vibesreggaearena.com and Caribbean Rhythm Radio at crrradio.com. Don't forget to download the apps on your laptops, PCs, and all your electronic devices. So let me let you get back to work, Brother KP.
Copy that. Thank you, Don. Always good. Always good. Always good. Let's dive into our study today. Again, we're not here to preach. We're here to inform, and with information, we can make decisions. This generation, the millennials, and all of the surrounding generations, are able to take information, take what they need from it, and apply it to their lives. And that's our purpose today, to persuade into action. In this story, sitting at the feet of Jesus, we are looking at demonized man. This man represents what troubles many of us as we go through this life. And the answer is Christ Jesus, the solution source for every issue, circumstance that we might going through, that we might encounter. And when we look at Luke chapter 8, the disciples, along with Christ, have sailed across the lake. They've made it through they encounter a ferocious storm, and Jesus calms down the storm. And for the rest of the night, they are able to get some sleep. And they are wondering and asking themselves and talking amongst themselves about this man that is able to calm the winds and the water, and they obey him. By the early morning, they cross the lake, and as soon as Jesus steps ashore, all of a sudden, a wild man, buck naked, comes running towards him and begins to scream at the top of his lungs. And the word says that when Jesus stepped ashore, he was met by a demon-possessed man from a town, and for a long time, this man had not worn clothes or lived a normal life. He hadn't lived in a house and had lived in a cave. He had been seized by the demon time and again, and even though he was chained hand and foot and kept under guard to protect himself, he had broken his chain and his fetters, and the demons had driven him into these solitary places. It doesn't take much listening to understand how acute this trouble man is. Even before the disciples hear about his sad history of being chained up, we can see that he is in serious trouble. There are no drugs to sedate him. There are no mental hospitals to go to. You can't put a straitjacket on him to confine him. All they have in that day is chains and a guard to watch over him, and that's considered humane treatment. His townsmen have been trying to keep him from hurting himself and terrorizing the community, but they have not been successful. And even today, we hear these types of stories with people who are strung out on PCP and these different bath salts that are being ingested. And you see videos where the police and authorities and family members have to really use all they have to subdue this type of uncontrollable behavior. But when you look at this man, this is more than just a mental illness. There's some demonic activity taking place here. Some people do have a small degree of demonization, perhaps a strong oppression or a difficult temptation, but only a few are so completely overwhelmed that they no longer have the ability to control themselves. And for whatever reason, whatever his situation might have been, whatever circumstances that he might have been going through, this man has almost been totally taken over by Jesus. So look at what he does. When he sees Jesus, he cried out and fell at his feet, shouting at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me." For Jesus had commanded the evil spirit to come out of this man. Now, this tormented man begins to shout when he sees Jesus, but it's not his voice that is speaking, but the voice of the demonic spirit that's speaking through his vocal system. And, you know, I know this sounds a little crazy and weird, but there's been documented proof that this type of takeover has taken place. Sometimes when they switch like that, it's often unrecognizable, and sometimes it can be scary. And we've seen it. If you've ever encountered someone who's on it, who's struggling, they don't sound like themselves. They sound like there's another spirit speaking through them. And it makes me quickly realize that we are speaking to a spiritual issue and not a natural issue. In this case, the demon immediately recognizes Jesus. Catch this. Jesus had not visited this area before, certainly not as we know it, and it is highly unlikely that the demonized man had attended any of Jesus's meetings. If he had, perhaps he would have been delivered sooner. But Jesus is well known in the spirit world. His power is prevalent. His power is palpable, and his power is purposeful. And when he speaks, his commands are obeyed. And as he commanded the evil spirit to come out of this man, the spirit understands exactly what he is saying. Can I just say to someone today that when you place your issue at the feet of Jesus, you might not even know what you're saying, but that thing that's taken a hold of your soul, that's wrapped your spirit and caused you to be bound, completely understands who the solution is. He completely understands who Jesus is and what he represents. Ironically, the evil spirit here understands who Christ is much better than the Pharisees and the chief priests when he says, "Jesus, Son of the Most High God." When when demons have shouted out who Jesus was in public meetings before this, he had quickly silenced them so that their accurate but demonically inspired revelations don't discredit his ministry. Now the spirit speaking through this demonized man is shouting at the top of his lungs, "I beg you, don't torture me." In other words, he's saying, don't cause me any more stress. Don't beat me up. Don't flog me, Christ. And he's kind of asking Christ to be kind with him. Here's what Jesus does. Jesus' command for the spirits to come out of this man is creating a tremendous amount of stress within him. Spiritual stress. Because the demon has made its home in this man for many years. and is now at the voice and command of Jesus is being forcibly wrenched from his grasp on the man. So these demons are in agony. They're screaming out for mercy. Well, Brother KP, what do you mean by they? What do you mean by more than one demon that's begging for mercy? What an interesting scene this must have been. A demon begging for mercy. Incredible. Your demons are at the mercy of Jesus. Your issue, your circumstance is at the mercy of the solution source. There's nothing too hard for God. We sing a song, what is it that God cannot do? And when God walked this earth, all demons, all issues that torment, that create pain and sorrow within us are at the mercy of the voice of Christ. So Jesus asks this man, what is your name? What's your name? And he goes, my name is Legion, because many demons had gone into him. There were many demons in here. Back in the day, the Roman military was running the countries, and a legion represented somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 soldiers. And while I'm not clear on whether or no there were 5,000 or 6,000 demons, I am clear that there were many issues that this man was confronted with. He had several demons living, habitating his body. And I think that if you can imagine being tormented by a single or terrible sin or a habit or a thought, what would it be like to be bombarded by hundreds or thousands of them? When I speak to folk and pray with people who are struggling with mental capacities, mental issues, sometimes it's a difficult proposition because they can't grasp what's going on with them. They are taken over by one negative thought after another, after another, after another, and it makes it difficult to be productive and lead a purposeful life. And so you can imagine what's going on with this guy as a legion of demons has inhabited his body. They begged him. They begged Christ to not go into the darkness, into the abyss. They were screaming out to Christ and begged him repeatedly, don't send me down there. So the demons recognized Jesus' authority to command them, and they were terrified of this abyss that's mentioned in the Bible. And so close by, there's a large herd of pigs that were feeding on the hillside. And the demons begged Jesus to instead let them go into the pigs. And he gave them permission. And so when the demons came out of the man, they went into the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake, and they were drowned. One of the things I thought about when I looked at the scripture and did a little study was, I'm thinking about the economic tragedy at the loss of 2,000 pigs and what that represented to their owners. And why didn't Jesus just consign the demons to the abyss and leave the pigs alone? But to be fair to Jesus, we must recognize that Jesus didn't kill the pigs, the demons did. So why did he allow this? It's a question that we ask ourselves today. We don't know the answer, but there's always a lesson that we can learn when God allows things to happen in our lives. What is the takeaway? The lesson that we can learn. I believe that if we are to take this narrative seriously, we must conclude that Jesus did believe in spiritual entities that can afflict both human and animals. And whether we are willing to believe in them depends on whether we are more convinced by the shifting sands of psychology, right? We see today that behavior therapy is a rising benefit, a popular benefit in your health plans. But there always seems to be changing. So whether or not we believe in these issues, these spiritual issues that afflict both human and animal, do we subscribe to the shifting sands of modern psychology or the teaching and ministry of Jesus? It is my belief that some of what we call mental illness today is caused by demonization. And I think that it would be unfair to conclude, however, that all mental illness is caused by demons. Sometimes things happen. The takeaway is that Christ is the answer. He is the solution source. So look at what happens in this story. The Bible says that when those tending the pigs saw what had happened, they ran off and reported this in the town and the countryside. And the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone out, sitting at the feet of Jesus. He was dressed, had clothes on, and he was in his right mind. And they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man had been cured. Then all the people of the region of Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were overcome with fear. So he got into the boat and left. This part of the story, as we lean into a close, is perhaps the most troubling and saddest element of this story. It's deeply troubling when you see the reaction of the people that knew this man. This man who is now cured from his demonic possession is now sitting at the feet of Jesus with clothes on and in his right mind. Think about it for a moment. He has been a bizarre fixture in the community. You've seen them in your community. You've seen people walk into church. You've seen people walk into the store, into the Walmart, talking out of their heads and acting crazy. And now this man who has been cured of his self-destructive behavior is being looked at by his community with fear. His family has been both disgraced and pitied ever since he has been like this. But now that he is clothed and in his right mind, the townsmen act out of fear rather than of wonder. They have witnessed a miracle, but all they can see is the destruction of their property rather than a man who's been set free. Luke gives us a very clear response about the wealthy swine owner's rejection. He says all the people of the region asked Jesus to leave them. How very sad it is when we witness the work that Christ has done, when prayers are answered, when folk are healed, when a situation has been made right, when one has gone from being a sore, a blight on their community, to now being clothed and in their right mind, that we embrace a spirit of fear instead of praise. This is true in life. In that day when the Pharisees and the law experts and the priests see that Christ is threatening their cherished values. Oh, what are you saying, Brother KP? Yeah, when the property owner sees that he's not going to sell a case of rock, let me not say that, a case of Boone's Farm to the demon possessed, to the alcoholic, when he understands that the cigarettes are gone, or the crack cocaine won't be consumed anymore, when the drug dealer finds out that he won't make as much money because the user has met Jesus, they feel threatened by the cherished values that come with the miracle. And in the Word, you'll see that these miracles that Christ performed only impelled them to plot his destruction. It's not just the Jews that rejected Jesus, but all whose lifestyle is closed to what Jesus represents. The man wanted to stay with Jesus. He wanted to continue to sit at the feet of Jesus, but Jesus told him to go home, to go back to the place where you are known. He wanted to be like a dry sponge, looking to saturate himself with the good news that Christ brought. Christ heard his plea and told him to return home and tell the people how much God has done for you. His townsmen knew how powerful the demons had been, and now Christ wants to force them to contrast what the man was with who he is now. And wherever this man goes, his whole life, the story of Jesus and how he was delivered will be repeated time and time again. Saints, can I just tell you, and I call all of you saints, if you're listening today, it's because God has purposed you to be available to hear. Sometimes it's tempting to pick up and go somewhere else when you've had a struggle in your life and you've overcame. But the story of Christ is far better. The story of Christ is designed to have a rippling effect today, so that others might know, your family, your children, and your grandchildren, the goodness of the Lord. Jesus is able to set the bound man free. And he wants us to show in this day our experiences to others. As we close out today, we see that Christ is able to cast out demons, that Christ is able to heal, that he's able to save, and that he's able to deliver. So whatever you are going through, whatever your situation might be, take it to the feet of Jesus, and he will set you free. This is Brother KP signing off of another edition of Sob's Situation On Air Online Bible Study, saying enjoy yourselves, enjoy your families, and let the Lord bless you.
Hit it.
Take off them shackles. Shackles.